The Nintendo Switch 2 has officially been out for 24 hours. I went to the midnight launch at GameStop and I've been playing this throughout the day. So, I think it's time for a brutally honest review. So first things first, let's talk about the design. The design itself is very similar to the Switch OLED with not much of a difference. From the top point of view, we can see the power button, the volume buttons, as well as we can also see a vent where the fan is at, a headphone jack, and a top charging port. As well as in the bottom, we have another charging port right there as well, which is obviously the one that's also going to be used to display. And as for the back of the Switch, it's basically the same exact thing as the regular Switch or the OLED. The only difference is now it has the number 2 next to the Switch logo, as well as they also ended up adding these buttons right here, which is basically to remove the Joy-Con since it's getting held in by a pretty strong magnet. As for the Joy-Con, you can see the buttons actually did get way bigger, and yeah, I mean the whole thing just kind of feels a lot more premium. The buttons feel nice, the sticks feel nice, and everything is actually more like I said, it just feels more premium. And like I said, the Joy-Cons are being held by a magnet. And how strong is it? I can comfortably shake the whole thing from just the Joy-Con and it's not going to fall. As for the size comparison, here we have the Switch Lite, which in this case, the Switch Lite is a 5.5 inch screen, whereas to the Switch OLED has a 7-inch screen, and the Switch 2 is a 7.9 inch screen. You can definitely see the big difference right here. The OLED was already bigger than the Lite, and now that we have the 2, that is a drastic difference right there. And not gonna lie, the bigger that the console gets, the more premium it actually feels, whereas to the Switch 2, feels almost more like a Pro version. Like, I know according to Nintendo it's a completely new system, however everything about it just kind of reminds me a lot of just a regular Switch with a more premium feel to it. So far the only game that I have so far is Mario Kart World, and honestly this is like the only first party title that is new to launch with the system, and honestly I kind of prefer Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Like, I'll probably talk about it in another video right now. I'm kind of getting off topic, but let's put those aside. But yeah, the Switch 2 definitely is a lot more comfortable to hold, especially for grown-up hands, and I don't really feel like you would need a grip to make it more comfortable to hold. I do have a grip that I use for the Switch Lite. Since it is pretty small, it does tend to feel a little uncomfortable after some long play sessions, but overall, that's basically the size comparison part of this. As for the Joy-Cons, we have both of the Joy-Cons right here for the OLED and the Switch 2. And again, as you can see, the buttons got way bigger and they're honestly a lot easier to click and just a lot more comfortable to hold in general. The sticks itself, obviously you can see it's a lot bigger than the regular Joy-Con, and the screen itself. The screen itself, like I mentioned earlier, it's a 7.9 inch screen compared to the OLED was a 7-inch screen. And right here you can again see kind of the difference right there. Now I know that the Switch 2 is not an OLED screen, it's actually an LCD screen. However, it's actually very bright and you don't really need it. And as you can see right here, this is basically with the screen on. The UI is very similar. And by similar, I mean it's basically identical. The only difference here that I can see is just the chat button right here. And that's basically it. But the UI itself, down to the games, the settings, and even on how to connect a controller, everything is the same exact thing as the Switch V1 or the Switch OLED. There's not much of a difference here, to be honest. As for the themes, it's just either black or white. And then obviously the game share feature, which got added in a recent update. And here we have the Switch OLED. As you can see, it basically looks the same exact thing as the Switch 2, except this does not have the chat button, which again, if you don't really have friends or don't really play online like that, the chat button is a little useless. And mind you can't even use it if you don't have the online for the Nintendo Switch. So yeah, there's that right there as well. So hopefully you and your friends have the online. And now we talk about the dock. So there's 3 versions of the dock. So this right here is the original dock for the first launch model Switch. You can see right there we have the USB ports, as well as when we open it, the latch itself is attached to the actual dock itself. It does not come apart, and we can see right there another USB port, the Lightning, and of course the HDMI. It is very sturdy and it's like a hard plastic, but overall it actually feels like it'll survive a fall or whatever. This version right here is the one that got remodeled for the Switch OLED. In this case, you can see the Switch logo got smaller, still the USB ports right there. And as for the latch in the back, it does come off. It's actually a panel now. And the same exact thing, now we have the USB port, the Lightning, and of course the HDMI. And let me put this back in. But overall, it feels very similar to the regular original launch model dock. And as for the new one did change up a bit, so it's definitely a lot bigger. It does also have some fans right there that you can see. And again, it still has the USB ports right there. And yeah, the same exact thing right here. So it's also a panel. It is not a latch. The whole thing does come off right there. And of course, it has the same exact thing right there. The AC adapter, aka the USB, and USB-C, which HDMI. You can go ahead and put that thing back in. But the only problem that I can see with this is that the plastic is a lot more flimsy than the original or the OLED model of the dock. You can see right there, it's kind of like literally warping. Like, I don't know, like this feels a lot more sturdy, and this is like a way older model. But overall, I am not a really big fan of the new dock because I feel like if you were to travel with it, then you just kind of have to have the official equipment for it. If not, you are going to end up snapping this thing, and that's not going to be a good day for you, especially with the dock being pretty expensive. So overall, the new dock is okay, I guess. So the Switch 2 Joy-Cons actually have a trick up their sleeve. So when you detach them from the actual Switch themselves, you have this little sensor right there, which in this case, if you're wondering what that is for, if you watch the Nintendo Direct or the announcement trailer or whatever like that, it is actually for a mouse feature. Now mine are still new. As you can see, I am barely attaching them here for the very first time. And you might wonder, but Johnny, how are you going to test this out and how are you reviewing it if you do not have this even out the package? Well, let me tell you something. Nintendo was smart enough to basically make all of the games that are coming out not really compatible with the mouse controls. Like, the only thing to basically test these out as of right now is going to be either the Welcome Tour, or if you play any of the other games that are indeed compatible with the mouse feature. However, the ones that did come out are either remasters of games that I already own, so I am not going to be buying a duplicate just because they released a Switch 2 remake of this, or they are games that are still not released yet, such as Metroid Prime 4, or there's also that one basketball game where you're like on a wheelchair or whatever like that. And well, those are not out yet, and I'd be damned if I paid $10 for a tutorial. Not to mention, if it's a tutorial, I feel like it should have been included with the system from the start. As for the official Nintendo Switch 2 case, I ended up getting this just because it had a screen protector, but it is completely trash. Like, literally stay away from this. It is literally useless. Do not do it. It was a nightmare to put on, and it's just a piece of plastic. It is a thin layer and it's very flimsy. As for the case itself, it's okay, I guess. You can see in the back it has the Nintendo logo, and I mean, it feels a lot more sturdy than the Switch OLED one that released. The zipper right here, you can see it has one blue, one red, and it does have these little slots right here for the game cartridges. However, me personally, I prefer having them in these little cases. So these are actually available for the RDS Industry cases, and I don't know if RDS Industries has made a case for the Switch yet. At least at GameStop when I went, they did not have anything available, but I'm definitely going to probably be swapping it, mainly because it's missing a handle. And no, I am not sponsored by RDS Industries, but those are just my personal preference for the cases that I have had for my Switch Lite and my Switch OLED, as well as some other accessories, so I'm definitely going to be going with that as well. As for the screen protector, go for a glass case. This ain't it, chief. But now for the main question you've all been waiting for, should you get the system? Well, unfortunately for launch day, it only has one first party game that is new, and the rest don't come out to at least 1 month from now, into which we're gonna get Donkey Kong Bonanza. The battery life is decent, but the OLED one just seems better. But overall, I'd give this an 8 out of 10. It's definitely more premium, bigger, and it's comfortable to hold. However, the mouse feature is a little useless right now, and the chat feature is locked behind a paywall into which both you and your friend need to have. Not to mention the lack of new games for its launch lineup is a little disappointing, but overall, I'd say get it eventually, but as of right now, you aren't missing out too much on it. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below.